So we're not that far off from the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I honestly thought that we would have already known all the teams by now because it didn't seem like it was going to be that hard for some of these teams to clinch those last playoff spots because some of them, all they needed was a win in regulation or something. And it's not happening. Now, the term turtle derby is always kind of a thing, but we're kind of seeing one right now because we still have two playoff spots, two wildcard spots up for grabs in the Western Conference, and still one in the East. And it's entirely possible still for one of these two teams, either Minnesota or St. Louis, which honestly right now, if I had to pick a team that Calgary would pass, it would probably be St. Louis because St. Louis is 1 point behind Minnesota. But I wanted to look at some of these because starting out here in the West, the Wild and the Blues, they both only have one game remaining. And they both are tomorrow night, April 15th. Minnesota is against Anaheim, who is 35, 37, and 8 for 78 points, while St. Louis plays Utah. Utah is 37, 30, and 13 for 87 points. Now, is it entirely possible that both Minnesota and St. Louis both lose? Not just both lose, but lose in regulation. Now, granted, I do think all it's going to take for Minnesota, I mean, if Minnesota gets a win, they're in. I mean, that's pretty obvious. If they get a win, they're in. St. Louis is a little harder, though. St. Louis is, I mean, they have one game left, and that's tomorrow night. But the team that's chasing them is the Calgary Flames. Calgary, they've played 80 games. They have a record of 39, 27, and 14 for 92 points. So they're only 2 points behind St. Louis. Calgary has 2 games left. Now, neither one of these games are going to be easy for them, but I highly wonder if the teams they're playing, are they really going to be playing anybody? Because their spots are already solidified. They play the Vegas Golden Knights tomorrow night, who, of course, have a record of 49, 22, and 9 for 107 points. And then the last day of the regular season on April 17th, they play the Los Angeles Kings. They have a record of 46, 24, and 9 for 101 points. Now, their spots are already secure. So, are they really going to be even playing anybody? I think they're probably a lot. I would think Vegas and LA will probably rest their top stars. So it is entirely possible that Calgary can win both of these games. If Calgary is able to win both these games, especially if they do some scoreboard watching, if St. Louis does not find a way to beat Utah in regulation, or I mean, even if they lose but somehow get a point, that puts them at 95 points. That will still put them in peril to potentially get passed by Calgary. It's crazy. St. Louis fought so hard to get up into the playoff spot that they're in. And now they have lost 3 in a row. Their most recent one was in a shootout. And it just, I don't know. I'm really wondering if the St. Louis Blues are going to be the team that gets bounced out and ends up on the outside looking in, and Calgary gets that second wildcard spot. Right now, it's entirely possible. It is entirely possible for Calgary to do this. Will they do it? I don't know. I mean, the Blues still control their own destiny. Both Minnesota and St. Louis both control the destiny for the playoffs. If they win these games, they're in. At least I would think. Because the most amount of points that St. Louis can get is 96 points. That is the most that Calgary can get. Now, depending on, because if I go and look here at the standings, let me see here. Because right now, St. Louis has 31 regulation wins. Calgary has 30. So it could be interesting if St. Louis, because I think if St. Louis wins in regulation, I think that will get them in. I think it's crazy. It is real crazy right now, and this is definitely coming down to the last couple of days of the regular season here. Could Calgary overtake St. Louis? I think it's possible. I think it's entirely possible. Calgary is in a decent. They're in a decent spot right now. They have a legitimate chance to get themselves into a playoff spot. I think they could do it. St. Louis, it is imperative for St. Louis to beat Utah. They have to. If they don't, I didn't think it was. A few days ago, I thought these spots are all but locked up, and boy, has that it just has not been the case. St. Louis, bad time to run into it to start running into some hiccups here, and it's got Calgary legitimately thinking they can take that spot. Speaking of thinking that you could maybe sneak up and take a spot, Montreal. Seriously, all they had to do tonight was win in regulation. If they would have won in regulation, they'd have been in the playoffs. They had a 2-0 lead on the Chicago Blackhawks. It was looking like, hey, they're gonna secure a win. They're gonna get in the playoffs. Then they end up losing in a what was it by here? Let me go back and see the scores here. They lose 4-3 in a shootout. So instead of getting 2 points, they only get 1. They still are, and they only have 1 game left. They only have 1 game left now. Their last game is against Carolina on Wednesday, the 16th. Carolina, of course, 47, 28, and 5, 99 points. Is Carolina going to be playing any of their big stars? Probably not. They have their playoff spot locked up. They know they're playing the New Jersey Devils in round 1. Columbus has won 4 in a row. Here's Columbus's remaining opponents. Tomorrow night, Philadelphia, 33-37-10 for 76 points. Definitely a winnable game for Columbus. And then on the last day of the regular season, on April 17th, they play the New York Islanders with a record of 35-33-12, 82 points. Definitely winnable there. It is entirely conceivable. Now, for Montreal, this time for Montreal, all Montreal needs to do in their last game is get 1 point. That's all. They get 1 point, Columbus can't catch them. Columbus can only finish with 89 points. That's the maximum that they can finish with. And so Montreal, all they need is just 1 point. That's all they need against Carolina on the 16th. If they do not get that, it is entirely possible that the Columbus Blue Jackets can find their way in there. It is entirely possible. Because if we look here, going back and looking at the standings here, Montreal has 29 regulation wins. Columbus has 28. So if Montreal does not get a point against Carolina, that will leave them at 29 regulation wins. If Columbus is able to get 2 wins here against both Philly and the Islanders, Columbus wins those 2 games, Columbus will pass the Montreal Canadiens. They will have them in the regulation win tiebreaker because Montreal will have 29, Columbus would have 30. They would be tied in points, but Columbus would have the regulation win tiebreaker, and Columbus would claim that number 2 wildcard spot in the East. Montreal, the fate, their destiny is still in their hands. Because all they need is a point. All they need is 1 point against Carolina. That's all they need. But the way they've been playing lately, I mean, there was no. I mean, you're playing Chicago tonight. There was no reason for them to lose that game. They were up 2-0. There was no reason. There was no excuse for them to lose that game tonight. None. Yet they did. They did get a point out of it. But still, they should have gotten 2 and wrapped this thing up. They should be getting ready for a first-round playoff matchup against the Washington Capitals right now, but they're not. It is coming down to their last game where they need to get at least 1 point. At least 1. Can they do it? I don't know. I don't know if they can or not. But it's the same. It's same type of situation here. Now, Minnesota, I think, is going to get one of those spots. Minnesota, they have a 1 point lead over St. Louis for the number 1 wildcard spot, so that'll make it tougher for Calgary to catch them. But it is entirely possible that Calgary catches St. Louis. And looking at because St. Louis, if St. Louis If St. Louis beats Utah in regulation, this is the key. In regulation, if they beat Utah in regulation, it'll put them in 96 points. That will give them 32 regulation wins, which then would pretty much, Calgary then would have to win theirs in regulation. It couldn't be overtime or a shootout, because even if they finish tied, but Calgary wins both of these games, but one of them is not a regulation win, St. Louis would still get in with the tiebreaker because they would have more regulation wins. Calgary has 30 regulation wins. St. Louis has 31. This has become, from what was it was looking like that the playoffs were basically going to be all set. I mean, all the teams were decided. It was just going to depend on who finished where. Well, now coming into the last couple days of the season, we don't know. We not only don't know who's finishing where, we don't even know who's in yet. It's crazy. I mean, these were spots that could have been theoretically locked up 3 days ago, and none of them are. Montreal is still in danger of getting passed by the Columbus Blue Jackets, and either St. Louis or Minnesota are still in legit danger of getting passed by the Calgary Flames. What do you guys think, though? Let me know in the comments section. The teams that are currently in the wildcard spots, Minnesota, St. Louis, Montreal, do they stay there? Do they stay in those wildcard spots? Do those three teams claim those wildcard spots? Or does Calgary and or Columbus somehow pass one of these teams? Does Calgary pass one of these teams to get in? And does Columbus find a way to pass Montreal to get in the playoffs? Let me know your guys' opinions in the comment section, because to me, I think they stay the same. I think Minnesota, St. Louis, and Montreal, I think, are going to be the teams they hold on to those spots. I'm not as confident on that anymore, though. He's not right now. Especially with the fact that Minnesota and St. Louis, if Calgary defeats Vegas, these two teams are going to end up having to wait. They're going to have to wait and see the result of Calgary, LA. Same with Montreal here. Montreal is going to be rooting hardcore for the Philadelphia Flyers tomorrow night. Because if Philadelphia finds a way to knock off Columbus, that's it. So we'll see if the current teams in the wildcard spots stay there, or does Calgary and Columbus, does one of them, both of them, or none of them find a way to get above that playoff line? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to know your guys' opinion. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. That would be greatly, greatly appreciated. I would love you forever for that. Also, hit that notification bell. That will notify you anytime future videos of mine are uploaded. Also, share this video with everyone that you know. Share the video with people that you don't know. And if you have friends or family that love hockey, let them know about the channel. Word of mouth is always fantastic. And, because I would love to have every hockey fan in the world. I would love to have you all here with me on the channel. That would be fabulous. And yeah, who would have thought this playoff race is really legitimately coming down to the wire? And yeah, I'm all for it. I am all for it. It will be very interesting to see. Does one of these teams drop out? And to these teams that are currently on the outside looking in, does one of them, both of them, or neither one able to get above that playoff line? Let me know in the comments again. Like, comment, subscribe, share. I'll see you guys later.